Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. This could cause the price of gold to skyrocket. It is what you think it is, at least to some degree. But on the other hand, there's an aspect of this that might surprise you. So let's explore. You can probably already guess what it is. It's related to Russia, but it's not necessarily the sanctions, at least by themselves, that are the issue. And we know that the oil prices are trading well above $100 a barrel, and obviously the geopolitical tensions with what's going on between Russia and Ukraine are having a great effect on gold and silver prices right now, because gold and silver react to economic uncertainty. But gold especially is what we're talking about in this video, because gold is held by central banks around the world, and but Russia has its own bullion coins, and you may have seen CCT's video where he's shown some of this gold, Russian gold. It would be neat to have one of these gold coins, but nonetheless, gold is something that is sought after by all nations around the world, and you've heard me talk about Russia in particular with accumulating more gold. But they also trade on the market. There's some facts that I didn't realize in some research that I've done, and it may tie into something else that I can't necessarily confirm, but I heard recently from another member of the community here. LBMA asked Russian gold refineries if they have links to sanctioned entities. Indeed, so they are putting the crackdown here. The London Bullion Market Association is, and this is an article from investing.com that was routed through Reuters here. The London Bullion Market Association told Reuters it has asked 6 Russian gold refiners it accredits if they have commercial links with sanctioned Russian entities, and that such links, if found, could affect accreditation. Governments, including those of the United States and European Union, have imposed sanctions on Russian individuals, companies, banks, and the Russian Central Bank since the Kremlin sent troops into Ukraine on February the 24th. The loss of LBMA accreditation would make it difficult for the refiners to sell gold and silver in the London market, the world's largest, as major international banks typically only deal with LBMA-approved refiners. However, bankers and traders said the removal of Russian producers from the LBMA's good delivery list would have little impact on the market, and that Russian metal would still find buyers in places such as China and the Middle East. However, I somewhat disagree with that notion, because if everything runs into the LBMA market, and with what we're going to read below that somewhat contradicts that, I believe that this could have an effect on the market. The other piece of news that I think is going to make the market nervous, and also Russia trying to find another way to deal with this, I'll talk about in a moment. The LBMA certifies around 70 refineries around the world to produce gold and around 80 to produce silver. Russia is the world's 3rd largest gold producer, folks. 3rd largest gold producer. You tell me that's not going to have an effect. I think it will. Mining around 330 tons each year, worth around $20 billion at current prices, according to consultants Metal Focus. It produces around 1,350 tons of silver a year, worth $1 billion. So there you go. So 330 tons each year, worth around 20 billion of gold, and 1,350 tons of silver a year, worth 1 billion. Now, compared to the total gold production, I don't know what total gold production is. I don't give an estimated, but if it's the world's 3rd largest gold producer, and they cut off all that silver, all that gold, I think especially with gold, that's going to potentially cause prices to go up, because gold's not going to hit the market, at least in the Western world. Now, they would find buyers in places like China and the Middle East, but it's going to squeeze the markets in the LBMA. The Hong Kong markets, we may see an arbitrage there and I think it could still have an impact in relation to that area. And finding buyers is probably not going to be as easy as they think. And yes, they probably are looking to do that. But from what I heard, the recent thing that I heard from another channel, Think for Yourself, talked about this in a video that was sourcing to a Russian entity that was basically saying that very soon the Duma is going to do away with the value-added tax in Russia, which will open the door for its citizens to buy gold, which means that could essentially encourage and entice people to buy gold, which means they would not need potentially the business of the LBMA. They could sell directly to the people. And there's a chance that if they go on a gold standard, that could potentially save the ruble as well. There was some talk about that, although it's not been substantiated. I've not been able to find any evidence of that. But nonetheless, thanks to Think for Yourself for bringing that information. And it would make sense, considering this news here, that if the LBMA shuts down, and essentially sanctions the Russian refiners, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. LBMA rules state that refineries it accredits are to comply with all relevant economic trade sanctions lists. The association is working with the refiners as well as with lawyers and officials to understand what relationships they have and aims to make a decision on their accreditation in the coming days, the LBMA's General Counsel Shakila Mirza said. The good delivery rules are very clear, she said. We've asked for compliance with our rules. Refineries typically have relationships with banks that finance their activities. EU leaders have said their sanctions target 70% of the Russian banking market. But there are loopholes. There's the SWIFT banking institutions and messaging system through the IMF. But many people think the SWIFT is like Swiss cheese. In other words, there's holes in it, and that Russian entities can get around, and oligarchs and the like. In Russia, commercial banks buy gold from miners and send it to refineries before exporting it. The Russian central bank is also at times a big buyer, and this week said it would resume purchases of gold in the local market. And that is something else that makes you think that perhaps they may be buying locally too and encouraging their citizens to do it to kind of save themselves, especially if they go to a gold-backed ruble. We'll see how that plays out. The LBMA is a trade association whose membership mostly comprises refiners, banks, and traders. Last week, it revoked the membership of 3 Russian banks, VTB, Sovnbank, and Otkritie, after they were added to the sanctions list. The 6 Russian refineries, the LBMA's good delivery list, are for gold are JSC Krasvetment, JSC Novosibirsk Refinery, JSC Uralelectroformed, Moscow Special Alloys Processing Plant, Pyorksky Plant and Non-Ferrous Metals, and Yokovsky Factory, Secondary Precious Metals. All of these, except Moscow Special Alloys Processing Plant, are also accredited by the LBMA to produce silver. Now, I don't think silver's price will necessarily go up quite as much because I don't know what value-added tax they have there in Russia, and obviously the East is not as concerned with silver, so they may have a hard time sending silver and selling it in the Middle East and into China. But nonetheless, I don't know that that's enough silver to really directly affect the markets as much. But I do think gold could be affected. But I could be wrong about that. Silver could be as well, too. When the LBMA removes a refiner's accreditation, the metal that refiner produced when it was accredited remains acceptable in the London market. Now, that is interesting news here. But however, if it remains acceptable in the London market, why do you need accreditation? And I think there's probably trading. Has a good delivery bars, it may be acceptable in the London market, but it's not associated with the LBMA. A little bit of confusing language there, but nonetheless, I believe regardless, just the very fact that LBMA essentially will sanction gold refiners is something that could send gold heading north tremendously, at least for the time that these sanctions are in place. The squeeze is on, at least to a point, and this may take a while for it to take effect. But keep in mind other sanctions as well, coupled with it, oil, banking, and the things that Russia is involved in, or had been involved in before this, means that gold could go up, and this could just piggyback on it, which means that they could skyrocket. And especially if Russian citizens start buying gold to protect themselves from other areas of the squeeze, where gold could actually serve as a way to give them some sort of stability in country. And that's what it's about. Gold is about stability. And the Russian people are hurting because of these sanctions, and they're innocent bystanders of this situation. And the LBMA, many people feel it's somewhat corrupt as well too. So, when we talk about, this rules, and we've asked for compliance with our rules. What are their rules? And how do they operate? There's been some criticism of the LBMA, and we've talked about that to some degree, and others even more so than I have. But it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out. But now there is a potential and a possibility that this news on two fronts, a two-pronged approach with regards to this accreditation with LBMA, that essentially Reuters is downplaying. I don't know. I would be alert and be careful. And again, we don't know. This is a big possibility, but not a guarantee, obviously. But with everything that's going on in the world today, one can never go. There's so many different factors that could cause that price to go up. Anyways, outside of this breaking news here, the other thing is a potential, again, not confirmed, but think for yourself, again, has talked about this in a video about what Russia is potentially planning on doing. Unconfirmed reports that they may drop the VAT for gold and also potentially go on a gold standard. We'll see how that all plays out. So there you have it. Interesting news indeed. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch this video, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.